Okay, fire-ready groups. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road from all of our discussions today. I first moved up here in 1980 as a young soil conservationist for the USDA, and as I drove around the county and became familiar with it, I'd see this, and maybe there were only 8 mailboxes and a dirt road. And then a few years later, there's 12, and then 20, and more of them. And now, actually, some places, they don't even have those. They have that big gray metal one with a whole bunch of little cubby holes. That's what we have. That, I learned early that was a sign that there's a whole bunch of folks back in the woods there who might need some assistance. And I think that's kind of what we're chasing, is these people. This one is, I think, is this Rumley Mine? No.
Rancheria Creek.
Rancheria Creek, right on the corner there.
Close, real close.
Okay. I just got a new clicker at home for my TV, and you don't have to aim it. It's radio frequency, so I still find myself going aiming it at the TV, but you can be in the other room and click it, it works. I don't know if this one's like that now. Okay, our mission statement, I think Rosalind read that earlier this morning, to motivate private landowners to reduce hazardous vegetation fuel loads on their property, both in and beyond the defensible space requirement as dictated by the Public Resources Code. And we intend to motivate these people by raising awareness of the needs, benefits, methods, and resources available to accomplish this. So, what is a fire-ready group? Well, it's a bunch of folks. We wrestled with this term, fire-ready group. Originally, we were calling it neighborhood groups. Well, that's a nice term, it's warm and fuzzy, but neighborhood groups doesn't really say fire. So we revised it to be fire-ready groups. It's essentially a neighborhood group, a bunch of folks together that want to help each other out. Living in a developed area like that first slide with all the mailboxes, along a road, and you agree to help each other do fuel reduction projects on your property. I think that there are fire-ready groups that already exist, we just don't know it. I live on Lakeside Road. There's somebody, Mary, I don't know if you're still here, and here you are. And I think that there are about 20 houses on Lakeside Road. Lakeside is up on Colorado Wedlock, behind the vineyard. The worst problem we had there on Lakeside Road for years and years was the road. So we went to the county and said, hey, what do we do about this? They said, well, you could form a zone of benefit, but basically when you do that, you're taking sort of the control of what you do out of your own hands and handing it to the county, and you just pay for it. We chose not to do that. We thought, well, there's another way to do this, and so we had a couple of meetings, and I think, Mary, I don't know if you were there then, but we would just get together at somebody's backyard, and maybe have coffee and crullers in the morning and talk about it. We needed the road to be graded. It was terrible shape. We get snow there. I've seen as much as 3 feet on the ground, 3,200 foot elevation. The road was just taking a beating. It was properly built in 1975 by Jack Wilt, but over the years with traffic and weather, it got beat up. We got together. I said, okay, we'll do it. Okay, how are we going to pay for it? Well, we'll just collect so much money from everybody. Well, the guy at the beginning of the road out by the pavement said, well, hold on. Why should I pay as much for 200 feet of road that I use and property you live at the end? Yeah. So we hadn't thought about that. Part of the planning process made us change our approach. So what we did is actually, I remember a lady that worked with me sat on a tailgate of the truck. We had one of those wheels that measures distance. We started on the pavement, and I slowly drove, and every time we get into a driveway going off the road, she'd mark the distance, then we go on. And then through a very convoluted, at least in my pea brain, a convoluted process of ratio and proportion, we figured out what percentage of the cost should go to each landowner. They bought into that. We got a contractor to come out. This is what we want to do. What's it going to cost? it was done, start collecting money, that's the tough part. I was elected the treasurer.
Took a pay cut.
I took a major pay cut, and most of the folks, I will admit, just handed the money, but there's a couple of stragglers, especially absentees. As a matter of fact, there was one landowner who never, ever, ever contributed. She just said, I'm not going to do it. I don't live there. I don't care. I don't use the road. Our approach was, she lived in Southern California. My approach to her, I wrote her a letter, and I said, look, you're obviously never going to move up here. You bought this piece of property for investment. Someday you're going to sell it. You're going to make your money off of the difference. And I said, it's going to be a lot more sellable if it's a nice road. She didn't care. She didn't contribute. So one out of, I think, 18 or 20 landowners didn't participate. The rest of us did. We covered it for them. So in our particular case, there is a road association. We're active when we have to be active. A few years ago, we got a big old culvert, a 60-inch culvert. It'd been there for 35 years. One day, somebody called and said, hey, there's a hole right there. Went down, and sure enough, there's a hole right in the middle of the road. And 75% of the people that live on the road drive over this culvert. The other 25% didn't care if there was a hole in the road, but the rest of us did. We got together, we had a need, we got a contractor to come in, dug it up, replaced the culvert, and those of us that benefited from that culvert paid for it. I quickly got out of being the treasurer, and gave it to a more competent person who lives there, and we actually have a checking or some kind of account, I don't know what, but we have an account at Yosemite Bank. There's probably $100 there, and they're happy to keep it. When the need arises, we'll come together and we'll take care of what has to be taken care of. The reason I tell you this story is because basically we have a fire-ready group, but it's really an informal road association. And I dare say, I have a list of all the landowners, and I think a couple of the other folks that are involved in the Lakeside Road have a list of those landowners, their phone numbers. And I dare say that it's going to be up to you and me, Mary, to outreach.
Paul and Annette, too.
Who?
Paul and Annette.
Oh, Paul and Annette. Do you live below the culvert?
Oh, we live at the very end of Lakeside Drive,
Oh,
next to the Telegraph Fire Squad.
yes, sir. Nice to meet you. We have a fire-ready group. It's called a road association, and I dare say that probably amongst the four of us in the future, what we'll do is maybe a chat after today, and maybe see if we can't chat to our close neighbors and get folks together. Now, there's a couple of folks in there. For instance, Clancy. Clancy lives there. He's done an exemplary job of keeping the property clear. The Telegraph fire came almost to his backyard. He probably doesn't have a whole lot of need for participating in fuel management on his property, but his neighbors do. And if we keep in mind the concept that Vince talked about of viewscape and the value of your view, I'm sure Clancy, plus he's a nice guy, he'll participate. I think we all will. But my point is, Clancy doesn't have a need. Whereas I do. Remember that ornery neighbor to the west?
Yeah.
I have a need, and I think you all have a need, and you folks have a need. So we'll get together and we'll work together and we'll make it happen. How do you do this? Do you make it a formal organization? Well, we didn't make it a formal organization with the road association. We sure didn't make it a zone of benefit, but we did have some community gatherings. We got folks together. We decided what had to be done. Let's call it a plan, and we decided when it had to be done, and in this particular case with the road, we were able to get a cost estimate. And of course, if for fuel management, if we hired it out, we could get a cost estimate, and we'd all know where we're going. It's hard to replace 60-inch culverts with a bunch of little boys out there with picks and shovels, but it's not hard to do fuel management on the high priority areas in the neighborhood. So today is kind of the kickoff of this whole thing. How do we organize a fire-ready group? Well, if you let me back up to road improvement again. Folks on Grosjean Road, I don't know if anybody from Grosjean, you guys live in Grosjean Road. A friend of mine, Klaus, you know Klaus, he called me and he said, hey, you told me about the work you did on Lakeside Road and how you got everybody together. He said, I'd like to see you come over and do that with us. And we went down to Dieter's house. And all of the people that live back in there, and there's more than 20 houses back there.
26.
How many?
26.
26. And we all gathered down at Dieter's and because, number one, I'd already done this on Lakeside Road, and I just told them what we did and how it worked and so on. Not saying that that's what they need to do, but just how we did it, take it from there. I will say right now that if, as time goes by, as there develops an interest in organizing a fire rating group, I'd be more than happy to volunteer to come and facilitate a meeting and help people get started. I know John Schroeder and some of the others of us who've been involved with this will participate in that and help get it together. So, this presentation that we have here, the slideshow and all of the other handouts, can be used for those neighbors of yours who aren't here today, but you want to interest in organizing this. We've got handouts and we can explain to them what it's all about. Chairperson, do you need a chairperson? Who knows? I was the chairperson on the road. I was also the treasurer, and I was also the guy out there wetting the stuff down when the tractor was. But I don't want to do all that. If you have somebody who's just, okay, we're going to get this group going, you can use my name and my phone number as like the connecting point. And I'll call everybody and tell them when we're going to get together. That's always a nice thing to do. And somebody to kind of keep notes and see what's going on. Ground rules, you know, if you've ever been to a facilitated meeting, they have ground rules and they say, okay, no interrupting and no fights. And as a matter of fact, at that meeting at Dieter's house, Dieter and Klaus almost got into fisticuffs. They just said, oh, two ornery old Germans, you know, what do you expect? So if it's necessary to formulate ground rules and such, that's something to do. Capacity building. What do you know about this? What do you know about that? I was just talking to Ed there. He said, and you have a fire-ready group. I think you said you have 14 acres, Ed, and I don't know how many landowners back, maybe 14 landowners, and there's a ring of dense fuel on your property that is sort of like no man's land, and Ed's saying, I wonder how we're going to attack that one. But capacity building, we can take all of this stuff and bring it to the meeting when you gather the folks together, and we can hand it out and explain to people. One of the things that I heard today was we were talking about the brush pile out there, 4 feet high, and I heard somebody say, well, shucks, by the time you get it lit, it's all burned. What good is that? Well, you got to have feeder piles. And somebody said something about, well, I know this guy burns all the time. He doesn't have water. Oh, he's lucky if he has a shovel out there. And as Frank was saying, busy, have to pour beer on it if he had a problem. You know? So folks, as far as capacity building is concerned, folks don't know all that stuff. And even though the code, the Public Resources Code says you got to have a shovel with a handle that long and this and that, folks don't know that. And so I think one of the things that we as facilitators could do and as the group moves forward is we can build a capacity and help them know what they're doing and doing it right. The hazard assessment, I went over it a little bit this morning. The way I would envision it is we go out to Ed's place. Ed called me and says, okay, let's do this. I go out there and bring this stuff and talk to all 14 of your neighbors, or 13 of your neighbors and you, except for those 3 vacancies that you mentioned. And we say, okay, let's take a look. Let's walk around here. We've got 14 acres, not a difficult chore. And whoa, look at that wall of brush. And over here, whoa, it's nice and flat. It's just grass. Obviously, our attention is going to go right over to that hazard. If it's necessary to do an assessment, if it's necessary to put some numbers down there to scare people and say, hey, you don't want anything higher than a 4, let's just fill this out. And all of a sudden it's a 7. Maybe that'll catch somebody's attention. We'll do that. And of course, within your neighborhood or fire-ready, let's call it fire-ready neighborhood, what you can do is prioritize which areas have to be hit first. Come up with a schedule, a plan. When are we going to do it? Who's gonna do what? I got a chainsaw, I don't know if anybody saw that pole saw out there, it cost me $657. And it reaches long ways. I personally get my son-in-law to operate. Because I had a rough time taking it out of the back of my truck. But also I might mention that as far as a neighborhood group approach, I'm not the only guy that bought that saw. My neighbor and I both saw a need to have it so we could prune stuff. And I said, I'm not going to buy one. He said, I'm not going to buy one. Well, let's get it together. So we have a piece of community property. There's no pink slip or anything, but we have a piece of community property. And he's much more meticulous as far as maintenance is concerned, so we store it at his house. But I can see where, 4 or 5 or 6 neighbors might all kick in, and now all of a sudden that big old expensive thing only costs you $100, and you've got it there to do the work. And I'll send my son-in-law over, he's a big old strong guy. Okay, so we make the plan, we find out what has to be done, where the priorities are, when is it going to happen. I'm sure not going to be out there doing it in July. I'd much sooner wait till we have some rain, we get out there and do that. And just another little story, during a telegraph fire, I was talking to somebody about this out front. I did evacuate, and after about 3 days, I noticed some water dripping out of the bottom of my freezer, and I said, oh shucks, I forgot all about that. So I opened the freezer, and it's full of tri-tips, turkeys, chicken, and sausage. It hadn't melted yet, but it was on its way. Well, obviously it's going to be a complete loss. So I took a bunch of that stuff out, not all of it, but a bunch of it out, started barbecue, and I was cooking food. And when that fire truck came up, I told you about Gordon Dulcie, when he came up to say, well, we can't get down there behind your place because there's no access, but what's the deal on all this tri-tip? Ladies and gentlemen, for the next 3 days, I had a steady stream of fire trucks coming. Eating tri-tip and chicken and everything else. In my house survived. So a plan with a schedule. We're going to do it at such and such a time, and who's going to do what. I'll do the cooking, and you can operate the pole saw, and we'll get her done. And we'll do it according to the regulations. We'll have the piles, and we'll burn when we can, and so on. And then, of course, you got a plan. You got to do it. And there's a couple ways that we can do this. We can all get together and do the work ourselves, which I suspect is what would happen with most of us. Although as many gray-haired folks as I see out there, maybe you want to get some kid to do it or somebody else or whatever. Maybe we're going to hire a contractor, somebody like Kevin, split the cost. If we're eligible, we can surely look into cost-sharing programs from these two agencies and see what we can do. Now, at one time, there was an old forester, Max Meadows. I don't know if any of y'all know him, but CFIP was just getting started, and I was chatting with him about it, and he said, well, it's and I don't remember the exact numbers. I think he said at the time, well, minimum of 20 acres. You're not eligible unless you got 20 acres. I said, well, shucks, that's no good, because everybody around here's got 5 acres. He said, well, you can get 4 of them neighbors, and now you got 20 acres. Well, there you go. And I believe, somebody correct me if I'm mistaken, isn't that CFIP? You can have a whole bunch of, Frank, a whole bunch of small 5-acre landowners together and be eligible for CFIP?
I am not the CFIP expert.
Good dodge, baby. I think I did hear that from,
I think so.
from Guy. I think he said that is allowable. So there's definitely a possibility.
Equip that's allowable too.
Equip is allowable. Oh, I didn't know that.
Contiguous.
Continuous property.
Well,
It doesn't have a minimum. There's no minimum for either.
But doesn't it have to be ag land?
It has to be, you have to be a producer, but timber counts as a product.
You can ask Michael or I later, we can explain how that whole process works, how you can apply.
But if you get a fire-ready group together and you have continuity in fuel production, you get a higher ranking when you apply.
So you're more likely to get funding.
So there's some possibilities there, folks.
Ask us later.
Okay, so some or all of the above.
I can add something to funding.
Yes, sir.
Your local fire safe council, we work on a number of projects where the fire safe council has applied for a grant to address the treatment of fuels on private lands. And what I mean by that is if your little community that you're talking about, if CAL FIRE sees a good location for a fuel break on private lands surrounding your area, you can go to the Fire Safe Council, have a grant written for them to collect the funds to pay for a contractor to masticate that. They also pay for a forester that works between the landowner and yourself and your group. And at the same time that grant is written, if the fuels along your roadways need to be addressed as well, which means maybe cutting it back 10 feet on either side and going through a chipping program, the Fire Safe Councils play a really good role in that, and sometimes it's a better fit than EQIP and CFIP.
Sure.
All right? Up north, meaning Placer County, we have done a number of projects up there through the Fire Safe Council where they have probably, the contract itself treated over 200 acres surrounding the community of Volcano, and it was all on private lands. So everything is in place. So it's a good program. There's no funds necessary from the landowners. The issue there is the landowners have to be willing to allow for fuel reduction work to be done on their lands where CAL FIRE looks at their fire history, looks at good placement for fuel breaks, and it's a great program. So work with your local Fire Safe Council as well.
Thanks, and where's Megan?
She likes
Well,
to leave it here.
she dodged it too. Okay, well, her phone will be ringing. I think that's a great idea, and I think that's what, I was involved years ago in the development of the Fire Safe Council, and I think that's kind of what we were thinking. You know, timberland and rangeland is covered by EQIP. It was before it was called EQIP, it was something else, a cost sharing program for ag producers. And CFIP we always thought of as for timber type producers, but there was nobody for all those little patches. And I think that's one of the things that the Fire Safe Council hope to accomplish is fill that gap. That's great. Okay, so we got the group renter out there at Ed's place. We got all 14 of your landowners out there, and we can give them a quick and dirty little training session, sort of an encapsulated version of what we've done here today. Safety came up a couple of times, and that's paramount over everything. And we do the hazard assessment, healthy forest concepts. Some of these places are like you're in forest land country at your place. Some of them are going to be maybe down on Guadalupe Road, where it's not really forestry, it's going to be oak woodland, such as that. But we want to keep the healthy forest concepts in mind. We talk about all of the things that we're going to do: thin brush, limb trim, disposal of slash. Definitely, I liked hearing what you all said about flagging the area, and you talked about specifications. What are we going to do here, folks? We're going to get together and we're going to do this fuel management. Are we going to take it right down to where it looks like a park? Is that what we want? I had an old buddy that he's dead now, lived up in Greeley Hill, an old forester, and he hated the concept of having it look like a park because it didn't look natural to him. He liked having some what do they call it? Patches, mosaics. Thank you. All around, and he didn't like the concept of a park, but that's in the eyes of the beholder. But we would help people to flag it, delineate it, and then of course, most important thing is how much of this country have you seen has been brushed, and now it needs to be brushed again, and then it's going to need to be brushed again. So maintenance follow-up is as important as the original treatment. LE 100, I don't even know what that means. Oh, I was sleeping at that time. Periodic workshops, you know, we can get together and, you know, so I guess what I'm saying is I don't think the intent is to say, okay, folks, here's all this good stuff, now go on there and do it. I think the intent is that we will support. I know the Fire Safe Council is going to be in with us, and we come back and have another workshop, talk to the folks, say, hey, look, you did a great job. Now let's talk about maintenance and follow up and such as that. And of course, when all of the outlying neighbors see what a good job you've done, they're going to say, hey, how do I do that on my place? Okay. We will have volunteers, I promise you that. Yes, sir.
On the previous slide, you mentioned, the one previous to that, you mentioned Firewise. Who or what is that?
Okay, Firewise. John Schroeder, explain to this man what Firewise is.
Firewise is a program that is, I'll say, fostered by the National Fire Protection Association. And it's essentially I call it a certification protocol. It's kind of like neighborhood groups. But people get together and hire or do it themselves. And at the end of the program, the schedule, Firewise comes in and looks, and if they like what they see, they give you a certification. You're then a Firewise community. And they have training materials. My sense is that it's more oriented toward residential developments within the wildland, as opposed to Midpines, which is far-flung, and people, there's not a sense of community so much. Lots of space in between houses and developments. But Firewise is, I think, appropriate for some situations.
Good, and I might...
Pine Mountain Lake is a perfect example.
Yeah, Bass Lake is also a Firewise community.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And of course, as soon as you get Firewise certified, you call Patrice, and she reduces your insurance cost.
In a perfect world.
Yeah, but I might mention that on the back cover of this pamphlet that the Rose Foundation provided for us, Firewise website is on there,
Okay.
so you can get more information from them. Let's see. Okay, so well, there will be volunteers available to help facilitate or just help do hazard assessment or whatever. Recruitment of groups, that's what we're going to do. Everybody thinks they're going to get a free shot at this chainsaw, but really, truly, we're going to make you sign up and say, okay, I want to create a fire-rated group in my neighborhood. So that's what it's going to take to get a chance at that chainsaw.
And you're going to create friends with the chainsaw.
Yes, yes. When you get that chainsaw, guess what? You're going to put it to work. Publicity. We're having some publicity over here in the corner. Thank you very much, Jerry, for being around, and we hope that we'll get a little bit of press from him. Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
I got one question, Jerry.
Yes, sir.
Once you get your Firewise program certification, will that make your property value go up?
It depends on the area.
Probably not. Probably not.
Area.
Let me tell you a quick story, Ed. And no offense, Patrice, but she called me in and she said, Jerry, I got some good news and bad news. And I said, all right, what's the good news? Well, you still got insurance. What's the bad news? She said, it's going to cost you more. And I appreciate your straightforwardness and just sitting me down along with 300 other clients that you had to do that with. It must have been a rough year for you. And so I went home and just coincidentally, I had to put a new roof on my house. So I put a metal roof on there. I really like it. And it's a beautiful roof. And I got to thinking about it, so I called Patrice and I said, hey, Patrice, I just put a metal roof on my house. Shouldn't my fire insurance costs go down? She said, well, yeah, but the value of your house just went up. So it doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to get worth more. Facilitation for new groups. As I said, we're very happy to do this. That's why we're here, at least until the Giants start playing first pitch. Yes, ma'am? Can I have some quiet, please, back there?
You have a group that goes around from, home to home and makes assessments and everything. How do you avoid, one person who might not be doing it as well as the rest of the community, to feel picked on? and, plotted against, and I mean, people with people. and-
Diplomacy, it's a dilly, huh? I don't know. I've been able to get out of some pretty tight situations just by being a nice guy and always taking the fault. Such and such. I said, well, I'm sorry, it's my fault, and if I'd have known it was going to turn out like this, I would have done it differently. But blame me. Now let's move on. And that has worked well throughout my life. But I think that one of the things in this particular case is that we just say, hey, look, we're just a bunch of folks here in the neighborhood, and we're looking to protect one another. I'm not just looking to protect my house. I want to protect your house, and if all of these houses are protected, then it's a group. It's a kumbaya kind of thing, I think we can probably diplomatically approach that landowner and say, do you need some? First of all, community groups or fire safety. If you need, we'll come in and help you do that. Because oftentimes, the person either just doesn't care, or they just don't know how to do it, and they don't have the resources to do it.
Well, they don't care if there's nothing.
If they don't care, there's nothing you can do about it. Like my neighbor I was telling you about on the west side, and it's really not as bad as I may have alluded to this morning, but that person doesn't come here very often, and when she does, she comes to the main house, which is down bottom of the hill. She never comes up on the top where I live. I am going to brush that. I'm going to do it. And if she says, well, you're trespassing, she won't, because she'll never see it, because she never comes up there. And it's just one of the things you got to do. You just got to do it. And I'm not encouraging it. All right. So, facilitation for new groups. We're more than happy to do that. So spread the word. Publicity is going to help. Word of mouth amongst neighbors is going to help. And then feedback. We did that drive with that road. We graded it, spent all that money on it. But then we had a 3-inch rainstorm the next day, and it washed everything down. What did we do wrong? Well, let's talk about it. So feedback is just a great thing, and we need to talk about what goes right, what goes wrong, and how we improve on the next round, next approach. And then periodic workshops. We're happy to do it. Yes, sir.
Who should we call
About what?
about setting up a group? About somebody talking to our group?
How about me?
I'll take that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta pay for these things.
On the back of the brochure, there's the phone number for the Resource Conservation District.
Yes, phone numbers are on here. The Resource Conservation District is, by the way, I want to give, right now, I want to give kudos to John Schroeder, an Associate Director on the Mariposa County RCD, and Rosalind. Without those two putting in the effort that they have put in, none of this would have happened. I just showed up in a meeting. But the RC, this is a program. The Fire Ready Groups is a program of the Resource Conservation District. So I would say that your first contact would be to call them, and then what Rosalind will do is say, Progner, get out there and see those guys. Okay, any other questions that we... Poison oak, I just want to say, no offense to anybody, but I've found that in my career, folks will say, when do I spray my poison oak? 4th of July. Reason is, it's in full leaf, those leaves are nice and shiny, they're just waiting for that spray to hit them. If you wait till August, they're starting to dry up. If you do it, I had an Indian lady friend of mine, she said, if you do it too early when the leaves are small, people think, well, it's at that time. No, because the little leaves don't have a lot of surface area, and the whole concept of spraying a foliar herbicide on a plant is to get as much of it into the plant as possible. Little leaves, they just dry up and fall off, and then it resprouts. So 4th of July is when you spray your poison. Mr. Schroeder, anything else?
We need those questionnaires.
Oh, yes, questionnaires.
I think did everybody hand in their questionnaire?
Forget about the raffle.
So Jerry would like.
Out in a truck.
Yep, you should be doing, you should be getting cozy with every one of these people.
I'm cozy enough. Right there, folks, that says it all.
Okay.